Hi there, and welcome to the Warlock's Tower's first YouTube battle report. It's a 9th Age battle report between the forces of Equitaine, predominantly a knight-based force, and the Saurian cavalry of at Gas Monkey 82. So what we're going to do is talk you through basically the highlights of the game and obviously the result of the game, and just focus a little bit on some of the tactics that we used. James, who I'm playing against, is a very experienced player, although recently has been unable to play, as shown by his current trophy war featuring one long-standing trophy. So what we've got is deployment. So we have James's deployment. We've got a monster on the left with toxic breath, which is a big problem for the Equitaine. Now, this is a double problem because this guy has a Wizard Conclave rule, so it has 2 spells. Now, James has decided to drop his traditional slam for this game. He's gone with 2 Skink Priests and this monster. Now, this gives him a total of 9 potential spells to cast in a turn. So he can small dice them, he's got options, he's got buffs, he's got magic missiles. So he's got a range of things he can use here. Next to those is a group of 10 Saurus just to fill in his core and to provide some punch. 10 Skinks with a priest in there. And then next to that is a bus of Saurian cavalry with 2 characters, so VSB and a general, both kitted out to fight pretty strongly with great weapons or the armor-piercing great weapon. Next over is a Skink Croxigal unit with those 3 bases representing 3 Skinks. Snuck between the 2 is a Stegodon. Some real punch, no characters on that, just as it comes with the blowpipe, the great big blowpipe. And then once again we've got 10 Skinks on from that with the Skink Priest in there, and then 10 Saurus with the Skink Priest in there, and then 10 Skinks. And then the 2 units of 5 camera Skinks yet to be deployed. As you can see, we've got diagonal deployment. We're both a bit taken aback, used to 6 inches off the diagonal line, but this time we've got 9 inches back from the diagonal line. So a bit of a change there for us. This kind of affected me. This is a list I've used a lot in 8th edition. I've just transferred straight over, and it seems to fit really quite well with little tweaking. So what we've got is, I always find them quite cramped with diagonal deployment. I hated diagonal deployment in 8th for various reasons, but in this kind of incarnation, we've got my 3 favourite units of Yeoman. 2 have got light armor, shield, musician, and 1 misses out on the light armor just because of points, and that's the one on the far right as you're looking at it. Next to, between those 2 units of Yeoman on the right is a unit of 9 Knights of the Realm with a Gleaming Pennon. This is a great unit. This is my independent unit. They can run away from the general, they can run away from the VSB. They've got a pretty decent leadership. They've got that 1 reroll on the leadership test if needs be. And they've caused people a real headache in the past. With the diagonal deployment, I find them less useful. They can't sort of skirt around people's flanks. It's a little bit more tricky, and with relatively dense terrain as well, it makes it a bit more tricky as well. Next to that is Trebuchet. And then the other side of that, represented by the base with the crewman on, is another Trebuchet. Really confused by the bolt thrower, why people seem to be taking that in Equitaine lists. To my mind, with spears being such a huge problem for knights, you need to get rid of ranks, you need to get rid of spears, and the best way to do that is templates. Yeah, I can see how armor is a problem for the relatively low strength and armor piercing of Brett's, but just removing ranks is such a key part. You've got to, when you go in with Brett's, you've got to hit them when they're not steadfast, and you've got to remove that threat. Next, that is a unit of Yeoman with the pegs behind. They're really just breaking up that space so that the camo skinks can't deploy behind. The pegs have a champion and skirmish, but not vanguard. I either forget or rarely use vanguard. I tend to plonk things where I want. The way I play Equitaine is that I will tend to hold back for a while. I'll let the trebs do their work, hopefully a couple of magic missiles do their work, and then pile in when things are thinned down. So I don't really feel like vanguarding right in their face, especially with my weakest units. So yeah, I tend to not to vanguard a great deal, so it would be a waste of points. And the final unit is 10 Knights of the Realm with the BSB and a mage with 2 spells on. She got reroll to wound or shooting to hit rolls, reroll to hit for close combat or shooting, and then the BSB and the general, which is going to go in the space on the Knights Errant. Both have 1-up rerollables. Heroic Killing Blow on the general, and on the BSB I've got 1-time reroll, 1-up save, and then I've gone for the banner, which allows an impact hit. Now, if they go in with all their ranks, as you see, it's a strength 6 impact hit. Only 3 of them, but I mean that's a decent punch, just to hopefully make sure that we do some damage when we charge. So it was a bit of an experiment. Normally I'd take the Worm Lance, and just that breath weapon into combat kind of makes a bit of a mess occasionally. So yeah, it was a bit of a change from the list I used to run in 8th. But yeah, what we found was that the camo skinks went on the left of the Knights of the Realm unit, out of charge arc, getting the laser out, getting the arc of visibility out, just making sure they were as close as they could be without being in visibility. And then the other unit went on the other side just to try and stop me vanguarding forward, which, as I said, I have no intention of doing, but obviously James is on the mind reader. So on from that, obviously turn 1 comes, and James gets the first turn here, +3 or something to gain that. So he pushed forward. Not a great deal happened. I got pretty lucky in a magic phase, and I made 2 armor saves. He was putting them into the yeoman, just trying to thin them out, which I can understand, although I'm quite a fan of having 1 yeoman who's passed his panic test trotting around, getting in the way. They're there purely as redirectors. Excellent unit. Anyone who goes to battle as Equitaine without at least 2 units of yeomen, I don't know how you make it work other than heaps of peg knights. But yeah, just think of an awesome unit. Yes, so as he pushes forward, he's obviously threatening with the night bus. I made a charge into the unit of skinks, which is now behind the night bus. I'm pushing back with my Brett unit of Realm, the 9 knights. Now, this picture, there's both an intentional thing, which James takes the bait, and a bit of a mistake here. So the intention is for the unit of yeomen to allow the BSB on the left unit of the Saurian knights, which are represented by the High Elf knights, to charge out and go into the realm. Now, I've failed charge, so it wasn't intentional, but I've given him, I think, an 8 on the dice to get in there. Now, he's got a dangerous train test regardless, coming over that wall, charging out. Okay, it's very choppy, but I've got decent ward save against him. I'll have a 5-up ward save because of his strength. And then I've got a few ranks. I've got standard against his BSB, so I think I can hold there for a while. Now, my intention was that the 2 trebs, if he failed the 8 charge, could drop some rocks on his head, hopefully do some damage to him. Maybe he'll fail that dangerous terrain test. If he fails his charge also, I get to pile in with the lance. either decline the challenge, or if he doesn't make the challenge, then great. And I think on the charge I can do a little bit of damage. My worst case scenario is he makes a charge, I hold for a while, and I try and bring the unit of errant knights in on the side. But yeah, there's a cheeky little trick that James has got. So the Slan is represented as Stegodon, so he puts the terror test onto the yeoman, and very lucky I hold. Very unlucky, he makes the charge with his Battle Standard Bearer. So Battle Standard Bearer comes flying out of the unit and piles into the front of my Knights of the Realm. Now I'm not too upset about this. I think they'll hang around for a while. Meanwhile, as you can see, the yeomen have fled from a charge from the Stygiusaur, I think, the monster with the breath weapon. That was going to be a pretty one-sided fight, so I decided to trot away. Being fast cav, they can get back in the fight pretty quickly. So here's another interesting thing that happened in the battle. What we've got here is there's a unit of Camus-Skinks on the far right, which James has positioned to try and sneak round. Now there's a unit of pegs below the wood. Now James is positioned so that he's right up against my unit. There's nowhere for the pegs to land when they charge. So my thought was, I declared a charge with the Knights of the Realm with the Battle Standard Bearer in. Now the intention is one of two things. Hopefully he flees and I can push him off the board, which is relatively close at the top there with the yeoman, thus having a nice easy trot forward. Now what actually happens is something slightly different, but my intention mainly is to clear this unit of realm forward. Now I measured it, these two knights at the back sort of indicate that there's sort of 4-inch shift forward, and I can get my pegs in at the back. It was only a 6-inch charge with those guys on the dice. So yeah, James, I think small mistake there, that if he positioned the Camus-Skinks a little bit further forward, he'd still be out of the charge arc. Yeah, he'd have further to run around and get my trebs. But yeah, as we see in a bit, that's not actually the greatest idea now. It's interesting how that's really shifted from 8th edition, where the bane of trebuchets was poison shooting. Now with their toughness 4 but 6 wounds, it wasn't nearly such a problem as I thought it'd be. And in reality, I'd have let him run with Skinks round. Obviously, killing them is much more fun, much more profitable. But yeah, it was an interesting ploy. But what happened in the end was I managed to charge, declare the charge into the Skinks with the Skink Wizard in. There's the metal model is a Skink Priest. Now they flee far enough that unfortunately for James they're close to the board edge. Oh, not that close, about 8 inches from the board edge. But they're within the charge arc of my Knights of the Realm unit with my General. Now my decision was I didn't want to turn my flank even to Saurus, because there's Scrox there as well, and I think they'll make a mess of me. The Saurus could go in, hold me up by going to my flank, because my numbers, they won't allow me to swift reform, combat reform, and so I'm stuck there with Saurus in my flank, waiting for whatever unit or characters want to join them and smash me up. So what I didn't want to do was not be able to redirect. So obviously once the Skinks have fled, I can declare the charge, try and push them off the table. Now it turns out that the Stegosaurus is further to the left. What I've done is I'm able to declare the charge. Once they've fled, I declare the charge into the Skinks, giving me a chance of pushing them off the table, which ultimately worked out that was a good chance and they fled. Now what I did was, rather than declare into the Saurus, which if they hold or whatever, I'm getting a rather nasty charge from the Saurus into me, the cavalry into me. So what I did instead was declare a double 6 charge into this Stegodon. Now, yeah, I'm Swift Stride, but it's still pretty unlikely, and fortunately I didn't make the double 6 charge, and cleared the skinks while only shuffling forward. Now, James then worked out quite well for him. He declared this charge down the hill by Thesaurus into the unit of knights. Now, I thought I'd do 2 wounds. I've got 3 rank standard. He's got charge down the hill. So I'm up on combat res. Okay, he's cold-blooded, but I still thought I'd break him and then potentially then charge or overrun into the Skink Crocs unit. As it works out, he holds with the Saurus, and it changes the whole complexion of the battle, makes it much more of a nitty-gritty struggle. At this point, he gets his Saurus unit into the front of the Bretts, in spite of some heroic armor saves. They do their 3rd or 4th rubbish leadership test. Manage to fluff that one, get run down, and leave my left flank really quite exposed. So at this point, we've got a situation where I broke the Saurus and overran it into the Scrocs. I previously positioned my yeoman to prevent the general charging round. That's why they're in a slightly odd position. And so I was not confident of breaking them in the combat, but confident of making a bit of a mess, starting grinding them out. They've just got so many ranks, it's such a deep unit that they're going to be steadfast for a while. Sensible move, even though his general can't fight in the combat because they can maximise away from him, and because the change of base size he can't get across. The general just had so much leadership and can obviously challenge still, but yeah, it's causing me quite a headache at this point. Ultimately, that combat kind of ends up deciding the whole battle. The BSB comes sauntering over to try and threaten my flank. Meanwhile, the lance at the top moves around again to threaten the flank of the Scrocs. The yeoman can't shift far enough forward to really act as an effective redirector for the Night Bus, the High Elves representing the Saurus Cab at the top. So this is the really decisive moment of the game. At this point, I've charged the Battle Standard Bearers unit into the flank of the Skink Crocs. Pretty happy with that. They're going to make a real mess of a load of Skink Crocs. Yeah, I've got a champion in there now who can take the challenge from the general. Okay, he'll get mashed up, but he will, throw himself under the bus nicely. Unfortunately, at this point, I decide to throw 4 dice at re-roll to hit for the lance coming out the side. And I think the additional impact of that would have been worth it. Unfortunately, I miscast that, end up blowing up 6 knights off the back of the unit, and at this point, it's pretty obvious. I go from having to kill 7 skinks to break steadfast to something like 20 or 25 skinks. So yeah, it's quite a I think at this stage an impossible feat. Obviously, my intention was to run down the unit or take quite a lot of points from the Skink Crocs and the general, which looked quite likely as I went in. Now, obviously, that's just not going to happen. The Coldborn Cav are going to come inside. The BSB and the monster with the toxic breath are down below my errant unit. So, yeah, at this point the game looks pretty bad. I'm basically relying on them for failing a cold-blooded 10 rerollable leadership test. So, even with my watered down numbers, I make quite a mess of the unit, but obviously not enough to break steadfast. They hold, and I end up, the cavalry bus is in, the monster's in, the BSB's in with his strength 6, strength 7, strength enough to make a match of errant knights. So yeah, at this point, yeah, I stuck out my hand and conceded the game. That both of the big units are going down, all of the characters are going down, and then it's just a question of James mopping up the rest of my army with me having a chance of killing some skinks at best. So yeah, quite a big problem for me at this stage. Now, as I say, one of the interesting facts of the game and one of the big changes for me was my paranoia over the skinks, particularly the camo skinks with their poison shooting. I think James was chuffed to bits to get some camo skink shots into my Treb. Now that didn't actually work out all that badly. And yeah, basically the 6 wounds and only low toughness, you suddenly think, well, you're better off having a big unit of cheap archers firing into them rather than cunningly moving around your scouts and getting in there. Then, yeah, so that was quite a difference we found. On top of that, I just found the Bretts. Yeah, I made some mistakes, but it's still that thing that if you go in harder and you lose combat, or you don't break them on the initial round of combat, you've got real problems with Bretts. They are pretty solid on the charge, but after that, they lack the punch. I also found the magic pretty lackluster all the way through. Yeah, I got a reroll to hit in shooting, which allowed the trebuchet to hit the knights and whittle them down. The reroll to hit in combat would have been really useful, but I think how expensive knights are and how susceptible they are to blowing themselves up with a miscast is just too painful to tolerate, really. I found it in 8th edition with the old miscast table that basically you could do yourself real harm with a knight in a unit. A friend of mine would always run his wizard in a archer skirmish bunker, and I can certainly see that. I'm also tempted to drop the wizard altogether and just run a no magic army. I love magic and I'm reluctant to do that in a lot of respects, but she's 350 points. And I think to make her useful, I'd probably have to spend another 100 points. But that becomes then a big chunk out of your army to gain that extra. Losing her allows me either a fighty character, so I could probably, without dropping too much extra, put in a character on a Pegasus, which I think would be really useful. Or just get some more knights, get some more numbers in those units. I don't like having a 4th lance. I don't think it adds all that much. It just makes the army quite unwieldy, but I think having longer lances, I used to run really long lances, which were known commonly in our local scene as baguettes of French knights. So yeah, I think that's an option. Possibly getting some more pegs, although I think I must use pegs badly because I'm not nearly such a fan as the rest of the Bretonian fanboys out there. On the whole, though, James played it well. I think it could have swung either way at various points through the game. Given that neither of us have played a lot of 9th edition or a lot of wargaming for quite some time, it was nice to get back on the table, nice to feel that you could make decisions which were useful and sort of novel, those kind of counterintuitive decisions, which, you know, some of them paid off, some of them didn't pay off. But yeah, it was a really fun game, and I certainly will be using the Knights again soon.